Hamzatul Wasl as if it's got a fatha, because we've got a word coming before it, and that has its own sound. So we got the fatha on the wa. So the wa will now join to the lam in the definite article in this case, because this is one of the moon letters, and the giveaway here is the lam has got a sukoon on it, so it is going to be involved in the sound. So we'll just say wal qamar. Okay, and below is the same thing in Majidi, so it's exactly the same except for they haven't put in the wasla. The giveaway again is you've got the small sukoon on top of the lam. Now with a sun letter with a word before it, essentially here we've got the wow with the fatha, so wa again, and because it's a sun letter the sheen has taken a shadda, so the shadda must be joined to a sound before it. So we're going to skip the lam completely, and the giveaway here is there is no sukoon on the lam, so we're going to say washams. Okay, and that's the same below in the Majidi script, but again they've dropped the wasla, but essentially that is Hamzatul Wasl. So simple rule in that case, if you got the sound before, just join it to the next letter that can be read. If it's shadda, shadda always joins to a previous sound. Now irregular nouns. So irregular nouns, we're not going to go into the grammar what is irregular, but all we need to know, there are a handful of nouns that themselves begin with Hamzatul Wasl, and we're not talking about the definite article now. We've completely finished with the definite article. So we've got a few words here. We've got imra'a, ism, and ibn. Okay, now the problem here, if you look at the Hamzatul Wasl, how do we know what should have been read on it? Okay, because there's no short vowels. And the simple rule is for these irregular nouns, so these are nouns which themselves begin with the Hamzatul Wasl independently of the definite article, because these are all actually indefinite, and you can tell that because they've all got dhammatain, so they've got tanween on the last letter. Okay, so the rule is you just read them as if they've got kasra, so that's why I read it as imra and ism and ibn, because I've read it with kasra. Now this is just a rule you need to know. Luckily there's only a handful, and I've taken this out of a certain document. These are literally the irregular nouns that you will most commonly come across. Okay, so there's only a handful. Okay, so they're listed there, and again when you come across them, as long as you just write these 4 or 5 down, if you come across them you'll know that they all will be read with kasra. Now in the examples they've put here with the Hamzatul Wasl, again they haven't actually put the wasla in there. Okay, so but that is Hamzatul Wasl. Read all of those with a kasra. Okay, the next one is just some examples from the Quran with these irregular nouns. Now in the first one here we've got effectively the ibn, okay, the noun. Now don't worry, it's got a kasra, etc. That's all grammar. All we need to know here, we would normally read this if it was on its own as the Hamzatul Wasl with a kasra, so you say ib, but because there is a previous sound, so before that we have the sa, okay, and that ya there is the alif maksura, so don't worry about that. We've got the sa sound, so the sa will join to the ba, which is sakin, so that would be sabani. Okay, so in that sense, if we're not reading the Hamzatul Wasl at the beginning of our sentence, just look at what sound came before, and you've got the sakin on the ba, so we know that was going to join. So again, the Hamzatul Wasl itself, unless you're reading it at the beginning of a sentence, will never have its own sound. Below that is the Majidi script, same thing again, they've dropped the wasla, but essentially it's the same. We cannot read that with the kasra because there's a sound before it. The ba has got sakin, join that to, sorry, the ba has got a sukoon on it, i.e. sakin, so join that to the previous sound, which is sa. Now imperative verbs. So in grammar there's this there are different type of verbs. A verb is simply a doing word, okay, so running, saying, talking, etc. But there's certain types called imperative verbs, which are normally where you're commanding a second person, so you'll say enter, leave, or you tell somebody write, etc. So these are all imperative, telling somebody to do something. Now they have a certain structure in grammar, but all we need to know, for those of you who are doing grammar, because really this applies to people who know a bit of grammar, is that if the imperative verb, you're going to ask a question, what short vowel is on the third letter in the imperative verb? Now the imperative verbs take a certain form, and generally they'll start with the Hamzatul Wasl, and that's why we're covering it here. So we'll look at a verb. So the first one here, and the top line again, sorry, the top one here is Uthmani, and actually on the right are the Majidi, sorry, on the left are the Majidi versions. So here we've got Iqra, okay, and this is, which means read, and it's a command, read. And they normally follow a certain pattern. They will begin with the Hamzatul Wasl, the second letter will be Sakin, and the third letter will have its own sound. So what we're talking about is if we have one of these imperative verbs, we're looking at the third letter and we're going to analyze the short vowel on it. So the rule is, or the first rule, if that third letter has a kasra or fatha, we're going to read the Hamzatul Wasl as if it's carrying a kasra. So this is why we look at, let's take the first example, Iqra. So the ra has fatha, it's the third letter. The one before it will always be sakin. So we're going to read the Hamzatul Wasl as if it's got the kasra underneath it. So that's going to be Iqra. And again, it's short half sound on the ra because the next letter is a hamza with sukun. Okay. On the left hand side, we've got the same in the Majidi script, and again they've put in the kasra for us to help us along. Now the next example is an imperative verb again, and it's not completely imperative verb, there's actually an attached pronoun on the end, but if we just say the first bit, the Hamzatul Wasl, the ha and the dal, that's your imperative verb, which is saying guide. So it's sort of a command, guide us. And you say this in your prayer, but although grammatically it's a command when you're obviously asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us, because you can't obviously command Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do anything. So that verb again, we look at the third letter. The second letter is always going to be sakin, but the third letter carries a kasra, so the rule is we read the Hamzatul Wasl as if it's carrying a kasra. So that's why we say ihdina. Okay, we read the Hamzatul Wasl as if it's got a kasra, and in the Majidi script on the left they've put in the kasra for us. So you've got two options really. You learn grammar and you understand why you're reading that, or you have the Majidi script, or you can do a sort of mixture. So you learn to read from the Uthmani script, which is better for you, but keep a copy of the Majidi script. And if you're confused, just quickly look at your Majidi script and work out what the i'rab should be, i.e. the short vowel. Sometimes if it's not even in the Majidi script, the only option you've got is to go online, listen to a professional reciter and see how they pronounce it, because there are exceptions to these rules. The next rule then is if the third letter carries a dhamma, which is effectively, we've covered the other two, kasra and fatha, so the only third one left is the dhamma, then you read the Hamza